Hi, I'm Elisa Sadiq. I'm from CUNY Lehman College. I currently work in the Office of Online Education as their educational technologist and instructional designer. Previously, before joining the Office of Online Ed, I was in the School of Education, where I collaborated with Leslie in making our online student modules accessible, and that included video content. So we go into our public schools and we've recorded videos of our public school teachers doing best practices in teaching, and we've had all of those videos closed captioned and posted to our modules. We're going to hear a lot about our project as we go along, so that's pretty much it for now.
I'm Leslie Lehman, yes, at Lehman College, so that's I don't have the endowment of the LEH family, is what I say. And as Nelisa mentioned, I'm the Educational Technology Coordinator for the School of Education. About 4 or 5 years ago, the teacher certification exams all changed, and so we started to do some training with our faculty, with students specifically, on these new exams, and we realized that we weren't really going to have funding for that to continue. And so we started to consider video and video pedagogy as a way for us to continue to deliver the content and the training and the workshops through video, through all the rest of our teacher training and all the semesters. And part of that was the going into the schools and improving. Our students in the Bronx knew that they could use video online to look at teaching practice, but they started to say that that wasn't reflective of what they were seeing in their local school districts. And so we felt that a big video project of us going out into our local schools, maybe of previous graduates who are now teaching, was going to really help our students in best practices. So we really, I would say, have scaled up exponentially the use of video in the School of Education.
I think this is working. My name's Stephen Nairn. I'm the director of the Fortunoff Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies at Yale University. It's a part of the Manuscripts and Archives Department at Yale University Library. Our collection consists exclusively of video materials, legacy materials from dating back to 1979 and to the present. We still are recording today. And I think that I'm on this panel to bring something of a different perspective, in that accessibility, while it is very important for our collection, was not the primary reason why we started to engage with captioning and transcription. We began a large transcription project as a part of a grant to increase discoverability of our materials primarily, so hopefully we'll have a chance to mix that into the conversation as well.
Hi, I'm Alexis Seeley, the Associate Dean of Online Education at the School of Engineering at Columbia University, and the Executive Director of the Columbia Video Network. We started doing online education in 1986, and we would send out videotapes to different companies of video recordings of the classes for continuing education and professional development. And I think something that I'd like to focus on talking about today is we've developed about 14 MOOCs over the past few years, and making all of that content accessible, and as well as all of our online content and how we kind of deal with that, making it available to students that request accessibility needs, or closed captioning and things like that. Prior to working at Columbia, I was at Barnard working in the library. So we also have worked on some projects for finding aids and being able to make things searchable. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, thanks everyone. So to start off, I would love to hear a little bit about the operational considerations that you took into account when you were getting started with captioning and accessibility for these videos.
Sure. Can you repeat the question?
What were your operational considerations in getting started?
Sorry, someone started the jokes of being on stage, and I'm gonna follow those. So the operational concerns were, I think that this will come up a lot, is budgetary concerns, and so we have to provide captioning for these videos that are made public. And in the first time, like the first time we were making these MOOCs, they were really fast turnarounds. We didn't really know what we were doing. We had a small team, and so we were like, yeah, sure, we'll get that sent out and have it be posted the next day, and yeah, that'll be no problem. And so the operation considerations were kind of money, timeline, and the feasibility of getting everything done in the amount of time that video production takes anyway. So you're recording, you're having to have all of these reviews, and for anyone that works in video production, it's not a quick turnaround process. And so working with big files and having everything go as fast as possible when you're in a rush feels like it's moving at the speed of something really slow.
As I said, this was a grant-funded project, and so of course money and timeline play a role, but they weren't the primary concerns for us. The primary concerns were really, and this is a luxurious position to be in, the primary concern for us was accuracy and the complexity of the materials in the collection that were going to be transcribed, as well as the different vendors, and we spoke with many different vendors in the run-up to this project, what sort of platforms they provided in terms of, do those platforms help us create workflows in the quality assurance area that will help speed up this process, and that's how we ended up deciding on the vendor that we chose, 3Play, because they were willing to work with us in terms of helping us figure out the best way to move forward in workflows, and to the point where the team was willing to look at our catalog records. Every testimony in our collection has a very detailed catalog records with geographic place names, camp names, individuals of historical importance. And so we worked with their team of transcribers to actually check those catalog records to ensure that they were creating authoritative names in the transcripts themselves. And the fact that even because of this heavily accented English language material, there's inevitably going to be large swaths of text that are just unintelligible or in another language if people slip in and out of various languages, which they often do. And so having a platform that allows you to flag these areas and address those quickly if you have someone with the requisite language skills, which we do on our team, that was what we were mainly concerned with in terms of where to begin with a project of this kind.
Budgetary was a key factor. We had zero money to begin with, and so basically the way we handled our tutorials, which is why our emojis represent us, we tended to use them as part of our characters in our training because they can wear capes and make funny faces, which we can't always get away with when we're teaching. But in the tutorials, what we made sure to do was to always provide a transcript. So in our early years, what we did was we would put up our tutorials and we would put it up with a downloadable transcript, a script of what was going on. I think that over time we were able to apply for a grant or an award from the City University of New York because we were able to show that our work was going to reach not only our School of Ed students, but we put it up in a learning management system that made it accessible to all School of Ed students in terms of these test prep modules. And yeah, so I think that was a key piece. I'd say a key piece for us was, again, because we don't have funding for that single solution of choosing the platform that sort of does everything, we had to figure out what learning management system that we had. That's the only one that the City University of New York was going to use. What was going to be our digital media repository that was going to be able to be embedded in our learning management system? And then how were those two going to talk to each other? We were in the process of, Lehman College was in the process of looking for a new digital repository at the same time that this project was coming on board. And then there was that other vendor, to be adding in closed captioning? And how do they all talk to each other within the learning management system? And that actually was a heavy lift to try to get all of them to talk to each other. There was a point when we were able to afford human captioning, and we did choose 3Play Media. I had to ask somebody from 3Play, please, I beg you, get on the phone with our new digital repository vendor liaison so that there can be a common, that you guys can talk in common, because you have to both work in our LMS. So it isn't easy. And yeah, it took time.
Like Leslie said, I think the biggest obstacle for us was getting our systems to talk to each other. It did take time. I mean, I was pretty much forefront of being there, trying to figure out the communication and where the issues were. So time and budget as well, because now that I'm outside of the School of Education and I don't have access to grant funding that's able to do closed captioning with a third-party vendor, I now have to go back to sort of our plan B, where I have to encourage my faculty across campus that don't have a budget to say, okay, now that you have your lecture captures, let's now go back and do transcripts, because we have to make this content accessible even if we can't afford closed captioning.
Some really great points brought up here, and I think it might make sense for you to describe your current workflows at this point, and then maybe any of the challenges that you had to overcome in getting to this point.
Let's see. So our workflow, and I was thinking, depending on time, we've been trying to alter that a little bit. So depending on the amount of time that we have and the person that we're working with, if someone is able to write the speech or write whatever they're saying, and we're able to then have the transcript already. So that's if we have enough time where we can shoot it and make it look good and make it look natural while already having the transcript. We've been trying to do that. But in the best case scenario, it sounds fairly simple, but we record the material, we send it out to be transcribed. It comes back in, we put it in Panopto, which then is then linked to our course management system, which we're using Sakai. But before that, we check it to make sure that all of it is accurate. And depending on the person that's talking, if they have an accent, we've come into a lot of issues with that, as well as some very technical material. And so a lot of it doesn't sound like it makes sense because it's computer programming, or people are talking about things that aren't necessarily in English, but they're not another language, and so there are a lot of mistakes in that way. So we check it and then kind of post it. It's fairly sending it out is fairly easy on our end, and it's the workflow is making sure that we have enough time and enough resources to be able to do that.
So we have about 12,000 hours of video testimony in our collection in over 20 different languages. And the transcription project we're working on now, this grant-funded project, is English only. So it's a very small number of hours in total. And all of our materials are in Kaltura, which is integrated with 3Play. So the creation of the transcripts, it's a very simple workflow, just luckily because of the integration between Kaltura and 3Play. It's the quality assurance part that's quite complicated. We have a project manager who then orders these transcripts in batches and then does an initial sort of spreadsheet, Google Sheets, and assigns them to student workers. Some of these student workers have language skills, Slovak or German or French. And they're assigned just to sort of look through the initial transcript at the flags, the errors that are flagged, and locate any material that has special language needs, and then we move those on to others in the office who have those skills. So it's really about managing the quality assurance and finding the people with the requisite language skills to then correct the errors that are flagged in in the transcripts. So that's essentially our workflow.
I'd say for us, there were, the key features were in our LMS that you should be able to, with a single click, put in your digital media, right? So your digital media is housed by a third party, but it's now got an umbrella. It's housed at Lehman, but it's kind of sitting outside our LMS. And so one key feature was that our LMS had to have a way where you could just, you know, click and embed your video, find your video. And that took a little bit of navigation. But this media chooser now is available. Then the second piece of the puzzle was round-trip integration, that when we are in our media, that we should be able to do a single click so that the relationship between the media, where it's housed, and 3Play would go the way it worked with Kaltura. So that was something that we had to ask the two vendors to make sure that there was a relationship where with a single click, there would be this round-trip integration, and that as soon as it was attached, so that in a sense I wouldn't know about it, right? As soon as it was attached, that it would then show up in the learning management system. It took a while to work out the kinks. I can't even say that all the kinks are completely worked out, but that's our ultimate goal. Because it is a very focused project, we are kind of coming to the end of it, and probably if I were to do it over again, there would be some things that I would rethink. But for now, with what we were working with and what we were using, we did not want to be engaged with a third-party vendor where we would have to go into the video, go into the SRT file that 3Play was going to give us, go into our video, attach the SRT file, which is the transcription. We really wanted this sort of one-click use because it was the only way we felt we could scale up best practices with faculty to be able to use it going down the road.
I would have to just agree with everything that Leslie just said. She pretty much outlined our goals. And, you know, we're, like she said, we're on a process. We're almost there. And without a few kinks left to work out, we'll be perfect eventually.
My Bitmoji would be going.
And Leslie, you mentioned that there are some things that you're still working out. What would you change about your process if you could start over again to maybe avoid some of these issues?
You know, budgetary issues are a key piece of the puzzle because in a big public institution where you're kind of tied to certain features, functions, our learning management system, et cetera, we're doing the best we can to work with the tools we have to work with. I think when we chose our digital video repository, we might have thought that the relationship, the three-way relationship would have been stronger. There might be a little bit of a weak link there.
Sure, that makes sense. Does anyone else have something that they would have changed if they could have started over again?
He had money.
How long do we have?
Just everything?
I think just time. And I think it comes down to time and resources. And you spoke to resources that usually they're fairly fixed for the fiscal year and projects come up last minute. But the ability to, or the need to be able to have something transcribed, you finish working on it, you need to send it out, and then it needs to be posted the next day or the following day. If we could miraculously just say, oh, these deadlines weren't a thing, or we had a little bit more time to prepare or plan, that would be great. It's not necessarily something that our office could have done differently, but just the overall, we saw something and kind of jumped on it and did a bunch of things really fast, and I think all of the courses could be better if we had taken more time to, not just the captioning, but the quality and content of the material also, so.
I'll just add one other thing. Because of our funding, we were able to do human captioning, which turned out to be critical for the teaching videos going out into classrooms, because there was no way that any machine learning transcription was going to be able to catch the little conversations of the students in a kindergarten classroom or a second grade classroom, or even the teacher talking to the class. So we absolutely, for that project, needed human captioning. For some of the tutorials that we do, I speak fairly clearly, and Elisa speaks clearly, and so sometimes we ran our tutorials through, let's say, YouTube, if it was going to be a public video. 5 years ago when we did that, I was telling Michael, who came from one of the schools in the Connecticut district, 5 years ago when we did that, the transcription came back and my faculty member was cursing. And obviously not, but that was the closed captioning that came beneath her. And I freaked out and I pulled the video down immediately, worried that that would somehow be caught. But I took a screenshot of that to use that as a laughable moment and a moment to say why we can't rely on 80% accuracy, not for some of our video. I ran that video within the last year or so. We ran that video again, and I would say the algorithms for YouTube have increased exponentially, and it's probably increasing even more, in that the transcription was much closer to what she was actually teaching in the class, and probably could have used a little cleaning up, a little tweaking to clean up. So for some of our video at Lehman College that's on the public side of the house, I believe the institution is using YouTube, and when it can't, so when it's the President's State of the Union, that then we send through for human captioning to get that, just right. So I think there are going to be decision times, even moving forward, for what we may need to tweak with what's available to us for
That's a great point, and just in terms of accuracy and automatic captions, YouTube does have tools for then editing those, so if there are things that you want to make sure are correct after the fact, you can go through and you can clean those up and they'll just replace the existing automatic captions. So budget and funding have come up a lot. I would love to hear, I think there are two sides of this, right? Before there's a budget, you have to get buy-in to do it in the first place. So I would love to hear if you have any tips for getting buy-in to do this in the first place, and then tips for finding the budget to do it.
For us, I would say from a School of Ed perspective, inclusion and differentiation and meeting the needs of second language learners is a key piece of the puzzle for us. And so role modeling that within any of our online work is pretty important. I think our president quoted about a year or so ago that we have students who speak over 91 languages on our campus. And so having the opportunity to have closed captioning meets more than the communities that you originally maybe intend to build them for, or struggling readers. And so I think for us pedagogically to be able to offer closed captioning services and transcripts gives access to the material to more than the learners that you think you're designing it for.
I think, so Columbia's a global university, and we created this content for global learners, for a global community, and that was a big part of it, to be able to have them be able to read the material, watch it slower so they can read while listening. Also, you can, depending on the speed that you're viewing the material on. And so I think really saying, like, this is the purpose of making this. We want it to be as accessible as possible, but also the law is really helpful, and the fact that if we wanted to make this material available, it's easy. It's very hard for universities or for people to say, no, we're not going to do that if it's part of the policy. And so it sounds like say, oh, well, we're just following what we need to do. But that's really helpful as an administrator to be able to say, well, I have no other choice. We have to do it this way.
I would say exactly the same thing. Now, again, I mentioned that our primary goal here was not accessibility, but rather discoverability. So, first and foremost, we're delighted to be participating in a large transcription project because it makes us a part of a larger ADA compliance question. So we're happy to have that law pushing everyone in that direction. But one thing I would say is that there are other ways to approach this that perhaps others could take us as an example, and that we applied for grant funding to do this transcription work. And again, it wasn't for accessibility alone, but primarily for discoverability and for potential uses of transcribed material in, let's say, digital humanities projects, and you could, whether it would be SEO, sort of search engine results, et cetera, improving discoverability. So to make an argument that beyond accessibility, which is important enough in and of itself, there are other aspects or other uses of transcribed materials or transcriptions that could be used for an argument for funding. At least that's how it worked for us.
I think at Lehman, as our number of online courses grow, it's important for our faculty to experience a course through the eyes of a student with a disability or without a disability. And recently I did that with my faculty who participated in a training workshop, and they got to experience the student side of the house. And they came back, a lot of comments was like, oh, I did not realize that this wasn't accessible. And although we made our workshop accessible, we did put in a few things to create that experience for them. And getting faculty to buy in and to experience what our students experience is very important, because then they go out and try to apply for the funding to get their videos closed captioned, or to get somebody to look over their courses and to make sure that they're accessible. So I think faculty buy-in is very important for us at Lehman across campus.
It just would be interesting. How many people are in the education space in the audience? Oh, okay. Big crowd. Okay, good.
Stephen, you talked kind of about how discoverability was your main driver for doing this project. And I'm wondering if you could talk about the ways in which you're using transcription and some unique ways that might kind of make people think about how else they could be using this product to create some more benefits.
Yeah, so first and foremost, they're used in our digital access systems. So researchers who come to Yale University or any of our partner sites around the world wanting to view testimony, we're going to ingest these WebVTT transcripts into the system and make it sort of an interactive experience so that they can move from the transcript to the video back and forth, as well as display captions if desired. Beyond that, we are working together with Yale Library's Digital Humanities Lab to do some interesting corpus linguistics sort of data mining on the testimonies to sort of discover and navigate large amounts of text in interesting ways. Another example is we have a postdoc program at the Video Archive, and our first postdoc, who is finishing her residency now, she created transcripts from, actually, this is not exactly a great example since she was working with a Russian transcript, but she, we'd be doing this with English transcripts as well, to create an annotated critical edition of a testimony. So that is the transcript and a translation with scholarly annotations to help individuals at various levels of education understand the underlying document, which is quite complicated. So there are a number of different ways that this is being used. In the search access system, there's also a discovery layer, so researchers will be able to search across all of our testimony transcripts. As many of you know who've worked in libraries, cataloging is like a map. You create a map for a book or a document or an oral history. It's not, you can't get down to the granular word for word level. It's just a very rough map. And we tend not to write, in our maps, we tend not to include things like commonplace things like shoes or cigarettes or other objects. We have sort of big theoretical models like places and things like that. So individual researchers who want to search across testimonies to find events in the testimonies related to, let's say, the use of cigarettes as currency in the camps or the importance of shoes to survival. These sort of idiosyncratic historical facts, it's much easier to find those in a full-text transcript than it is in a catalog record. Just they won't be there, so they have real value. These transcripts have enormous value for our materials.
And then Alexis, Leslie, and Elisa, you all approach this from an accessibility standpoint first, but I would love to hear if you've seen other benefits of having captions for other students.
Being able to search the transcript for information is really helpful. Keyword finding, you can, that's been really beneficial when you're looking to go back to something that you weren't able to view before, and to really, like I said before, we were talking about very technical information, and so you can go back to it, and even if you can hear and listen, it's just sometimes, just for different learning methodologies and different ways people learn. Some people really like to be able to read it, or just listen, or read and listen, or go back and be able to underline, or print things out. So there's, we've had a lot of feedback that everyone that has it is using it, whether we make it available for everyone, we're not able to for many different reasons. But for the content that we are able to do, it's been used by everyone, not just people that need it for accessibility.
I would piggyback on that and just add on, imagine our students are traveling by subway and they're watching our tutorials or some of the content on their phones, which a lot of our students do their work on their phones, all of it. So to be able to listen and watch, replay, play it over again, again, probably our second language learner population, our struggling reader population, I would say related to closed captioning, that's been a piece of the puzzle. I would say another piece of the puzzle, although we're talking predominantly about video related to closed captioning, in the process of this project, we basically looked over our modules for visually impaired and blind students and hard of hearing and deaf students. And the truth of the matter is, in approaching making the online coursework accessible and available to them, we probably met the needs. It's under the concept of universal design. By meeting the needs of some population, we know that there are many other students that use some of the features that we've put in that we might not have put in for you, but that they are taking advantage of it. And I know it was mentioned earlier, you should see what it's like to go through a course or go through something web using a screen reader. I would say that might have been the most eye-opening piece of the puzzle for Nelisa and myself and our team, which was we had felt like we had designed a pretty accessible course, but it wasn't going to be done until I invited somebody on my team who was blind and could go through it. He went through it hundreds of pages, so he couldn't go through everything, but he went through big sections of our website and of our coursework with 3 different screen readers, and we videotaped him doing that. And we basically had him go through before we did some improvements and after we did some improvements. And at the end of our project, we decided to actually make our fail, or we purposefully made some fail opportunities so that a larger audience could see what it looks like or sounds like in a pass. So that is public, and that we will pass something out, we'll share the URL, because you can go through and you can hear what the screen reader sounds like when it's going through. A basic example would be that a faculty member puts up a bunch of articles, and it's the title of the article, title of the article, title of the article, and then there's a little link that says, click here, click here, click here, click here, right? But somebody who uses a screen reader uses their screen reader almost as a way to kind of navigate the page as a table of contents. Give me a sense of what's on that page by advancing through by link, 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 right? Give me a sense of what's on that page. Well, if the screen reader reads back, click here, click here, click here, click here, click here, click here, click. For your entire page, you really have not improved the accessibility for that student. That student would basically need to turn the screen reader on and read through the whole page, which probably no one in the audience does, right? We all scan the page, but the only way somebody with a screen reader can scan the page is if the actual URL of the link has meaning and has some accessibility. So we're going to invite you to see where we tripped over ourselves and what we learned. And some of them are basic improvements that I think faculty in K-12 schools, we have basically written back to people when they put click here in an email. Try not to put click here in an email, just hyperlink the whole word. So we've kind of changed practice in general. We've become, a little bit where we, highlight where there can be improvements. Even here, our names, probably just for the visually impaired, probably the name, where we're from, maybe the font is a little too small and a little too gray. It sort of has opened our eyes to a whole new way of looking at how our students and how our populations access material.
That's a great point, and it's definitely eye-opening to use a screen reader for the first time and really see how much of the web is inaccessible to people who are using screen readers and even keyboards to navigate. Yeah. I want to make sure we save some time for audience questions. Does anyone have a question for anyone on the panel?
Hi. Quick question for you guys. One thing I wanted to see, because you guys brought up about budget and the cost of captioning, have you guys ever thought of kind of partnering up with the disability services or other departments? Because one thing I've realized on universities that this is the silo approach where each department kind of says, okay, I can take this on because allocated funds within the academic year goes directly to your department. But I think working your way through an accessibility or disability service that we know our actual users can collaborate and share the budget costs of that. Have you guys ever considered that?
It's a brilliant, brilliant question. So the truth of the matter is, so funding that goes through those offices sometimes can't cover all material, but it's an accommodation. So in PK through 12, students are identified and their disabilities must be accommodated. When you get to higher education, it's by self-reporting. And so not all students self-identify. Those who do, absolutely the funding through the disability offices or Office of Disability, absolutely the accommodation, the closed captioning, everything must and will happen. I think the question is whether proactively across the board we have the budget for everything to be accessible, so that for the many students who don't self-identify and users of your tools who don't self-identify, would they be able to benefit from that? But it's a great point. Yes, collaborate when you can.
Yeah, we also collaborate with our Office of Disabilities, and those are the times that we are able to make that content available and share within the budget. It's, as you said, if people haven't identified or don't ask for that accommodation, then we don't make that other material available in that way because it hasn't been asked for. And also to the point of collaboration, I sit on a committee where finally we're within all colleges and people at Columbia were talking about the different services that we use and the different, price points and contracts that you have, and like all of these different things, so you can make it more not siloed. We had been doing it in our own departments and saying, oh, I need this, I need that, and so we're really trying to take a more kind of universal approach to it.
Building on the last question about disability, I was interested, I was going to ask a similar question, but I'm also interested in whether in the colleges you've got universal design committees that will draw everything in so that all benefit, including people with disability. Can you talk a bit about that?
So we do have a UDL, a Universal Design for Learning approach to designing all our courses. Recently, in the Office of Online Ed, we have sort of developed a template for our learning management system to be used across all courses that addresses accessibility, but as well as encourage design for all our learners across the board, even if they don't require special accommodations. So that's one way we're tackling it, where we're having streamlined LMS templates. Of course, all templates are adaptable, but if we give them the key requirements that they need to fulfill, then faculty are able to at least have a jumping off point.
Yeah, I mean, I think all universal design principles are definitely a piece of the puzzle. Multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, best coursework practices, of which, again, if I asked how many of you have used the Zoom ability on your phones, we probably all have zoomed in. It was not necessarily designed for me, but I use it all the time. The microphone on your phone maybe wasn't designed for me, but I use it all the time. So those kind of things, yes, absolutely.
So we're a little bit outside of this area, but I will say that our staff serves on committees at the university level that are looking at accessibility issues, and we're sharing our experience with vendors and the work we've done, et cetera, with these larger committees. And of course, at the Yale University level, there are accessibility policies in place, and I've seen in the last 6 to 8 months lots of movement towards what I would say is a pretty progressive policy towards video materials and transcription and captions, as well as a sort of overall movement towards the idea that good design is accessible design, that there really is no need to be talking about these two things in separate ways. It's just accessibility is good design. So, and I think at the university level, that's improving dramatically.
I think we have time for one more question.
Thanks. Do any of you include descriptive visual information in your videos for your online courses or course materials in your LMSs?
A challenge beyond what we are capable of doing, for sure. It's definitely something that's been on my radar screen, especially since we had this blind student work with us. But it is not something we have been able to approach at this point.
The same for us. But it is something that we're aware of and have been having conversations about, but haven't been able to figure out necessarily how to implement that.
I'll follow up with one thing. The two presentations that took place today, one of them had the great visuals where, in a sense, the visual speaks a piece of what it is you're trying to say, more than what your words could communicate. There was something about the visual. And then the second presentation was the black letters on a white background, or the other way around. No, black letters on a white background. In truth, for a visually impaired student, the second presentation was probably the grand slam presentation for that student. Because in some of the earlier, the first presentation, some of the images were maybe a little too small, it was a little hard to decipher, or could have been hard. So I think the balance in being an educator is, what's the trade-off? Who do you think your audience is? How could you could you have taken that first one to not lose the visual learners, right? Because you have a lot of visual learners and you don't want to lose them, but is there a way where you could have zoomed in so then somebody who was visually impaired could have seen it? And then it's for the legally blind population as to how do you really describe those visuals. And so all I can say is that at least when I do presentations, I try to make sure that I am a little bit describing what's going on in the pictures. And I don't just use it as, it's the picture of the cat and everybody laughs, and then I don't explain that it was, the cat that was ironic or something like that. So it's just being, oh, it's that cat. Oh, it's just that cat. So.
Well, I appreciate the fact that we're all, I think, in the same boat with descriptive visual information. We're all kind of behind and hoping to catch up. If I could ask everyone here, when you do get to the point where you include descriptive visual information, please also include it in your text transcripts. Not only have the caption file and the descriptive visual file separate, please put them together so that my constituent group, those who are deaf and blind, can access the information in one fell swoop.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Well, that's all we have time for the panel. Thank you all so much for being here and sharing your expertise.